Hello and welcome to the Second Tier podcast. And this is a live reaction fresh off the back of Leeds United's 4-0 thumping of Bristol City here on Monday night. Leeds' last game at Elland Road, of course, this season. It's a game which has big implications in the title race and, of course, in the playoff race as well. All of that will be discussed very shortly. I am, of course, Ryan Dilks, and I'm joined by the Patrick Bamford to my Joel Pirro. It's Justin Peach.
Good day to you, Ryan.
Justin, I think what we've just seen there is Leeds United at their absolute ruthless best. Once again, it's not the first time we've done a live stream talking about a Leeds game. And fresh off the back of that, I think that was one of their most dominant performances of the season against a very good opposition as well, we have to point out.
Yeah, very good opposition, but it was champagne football at times, wasn't it, from Leeds? It was brilliant, and they save it for those moments. I know you can sort of aim a certain amount of criticism to Leeds at certain points of this season for not killing games off, but that wasn't the case here. Obviously, the title's still on the cards. There's still a lot to play for from a Leeds point of view, and they had to make sure of it. As you pointed out, Bristol City are a very good side. But what we saw from Leeds was dominance, it was determination, it was hunger. You know, those points, I think, in the second half where Jayden Bogle and Junior Firpo were basically camped out on the right and left flanks in and around Bristol City's box. It was that dominant. I'd be interested to see their heat maps. But yeah, this was brilliant football from Leeds and a real showcase of what they're capable of at this level.
Yeah, it was pretty brutal at times. I should just say, while we're at the start of the show, if you are watching us on this live stream on YouTube right now, then please leave us a comment. Get involved in the conversation. We'll read out some of your comments as the show goes on. But Justin, I thought I'd just read out some of the stats from this game because, Christ alive, 23 shots to 3 in favour of Leeds United, 74% possession. Max O'Leary, poor Max O'Leary in the Bristol City goal, had a very busy night. He had 8 saves to make to Carl Darlow's 1. And Leeds had 12 shots on target. That is absolutely insane, isn't it? Bristol City didn't have a shot until the 74th minute of this game, which, as we say, just shows how dominant this was. And Leeds at times have been guilty this season of failing to kill off games earlier than they have done. This was them killing off the game and then kind of just kicking around the carcass for a little bit and just toying with it.
Yeah, they were toying with it. Look, this is what Leeds are capable of, and we know this. There were times, as I pointed out a minute ago, where they were just camped out in Bristol City. So I think it was just a mere couple of minutes into the second half when Max O'Leary had to pull off a wonder double save.
Triple save. It was a triple save, Justin.
Yeah. There we go. That really set the standard of the game, and I think if you hark back to the atmosphere at the very start of the game, where it just felt like Leeds wanted it. They really, really wanted it. The hunger was there, the drive was there, and then the quality was shown as well. I know a lot of thoughts have come across from Leeds fans about their squad sort of being a better rounded squad for the Championship this season, where they don't have just one or two individuals like Rutter and Somerville. They have several key players who probably aren't as good as those individuals. And we saw it, like Wilfred Gnonto, Joel Pirro were brilliant. Lassi Ramazani came on and had such an impact as well. Mana Solomon was fantastic. So many players. I think the only players you can really say who didn't have a good game because they didn't have a game at all was Carl Darlow.
Yeah, he had a pretty quiet game, didn't he? It was probably one of the easiest afternoons he's ever had. It was somewhat comparable to his afternoons from earlier on in the season where he was just sat on the Leeds bench, not doing anything. Yeah, pretty much, really. But yeah, it was absolutely brutal. And we may as well gush over this Leeds performance a bit more. Just in the first goal came from Ayo Tanaka, who was completely free at the back post for whatever reason. But it was like a promotion party atmosphere, really, wasn't it, at Elland Road? Because it is their last game at Elland Road this season, of course. And the Leeds fans were clearly in a party mood, and that kind of reflected onto the pitch. And then things kicked off nice and early with Ayo Tanaka getting that goal, Justin. Don't know what the Bristol City defenders were doing. They just kind of left him. But it got things off to a good start, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. And again, it's those sort of moments, the early goals, they really do take the anxiety away from games. And I think Elland Road's one of those places where, if it does build, it can really impact what happens on the pitch. So an early goal, along with the atmosphere at the start of the game. And like I said, it was champagne football. The glasses came out, didn't they? And champagne was flowing as the game was going. It really was one of those types of fixtures for Leeds. And it's just one of those reminders of what they are capable of. Look, they're on 97 points. They're on 97 points. It's an astonishing season. Daniel Farke has achieved over 90 points once again. He's only failed to do it in one of his championship seasons so far, which was that season where he finished mid-table with Norwich in his first year at championship level. Conceded 29 goals, which would have been a championship record had it not been for Burnley's astonishing levels. This is just another reminder of what they're capable of this game.
Yeah, and another brilliant reminder was the second goal. And it took a bit of time for Leeds to get it, but my oh my, Justin, that pass from Joel Pirro was absolutely outrageous. Willie Gnonto, to be fair to him, still had a bit to do, but Joel Pirro really put it on a plate for him right there, didn't he?
Yeah, it was a beautiful pass, and I think people forget what Joel Pirro is capable of on a technical level. It's probably a bit of a daft comment to make because of the amount of goals he scored for Leeds, but his ability to ghost in and around the box and find himself in such good positions. He's not averse to dropping deeper and being able to play those passes. He's not an out and out number 9. He's a false 9. He's a poacher. He's a bit of everything. It's great. It's great to watch him play football, and that passes again. It's like Leeds, like this game of Leeds. It's a reminder of what potential is there for him. And I know, they did flip to possession and turn that over very, very quickly. But you're asking a striker to play that pass on a sixpence, and it really was on a sixpence. It was a beautifully directed ball into Wilfred Gnonto, and Wilfred Gnonto, yeah, right, he had a lot to do, but the job was made easier by how perfect that pass was.
Yeah, I think it says a lot that Max O'Leary, the Bristol City keeper, was about to come out to try and deal with it, but then he just realised, oh no, there's nothing I can do about that. It was just absolutely inch perfect from Joel Pirro. And that pretty much killed off the game from that point. I mean, let's be honest, up until the second goal, it never looked like Bristol City were going to get back into it anyway, but that really did kill things off. And then the icing on that big, beautiful Leeds United cake came in the 82nd minute. Large Ramazani came on in the 81st minute, and a matter of seconds later managed to score a goal, which is interesting that he scored it because he has been getting a bit of stick from Daniel Farke in recent weeks. So for him to get that goal, a guy who's not maybe had the season that he was perhaps hoping after moving to Leeds, and this was a nice little thing for him. And then of course he got another one straight afterwards as well, Justin.
Yeah, it was a wonderful way to, I wouldn't say put the old shush to Daniel Farke. I've not, but he's clearly listened to the criticism, feedback that he's had from his manager, and he's put it into this display. This is what I mean. It felt like Leeds were hungry here. They were hungry. Every single player wanted it. They wanted to prove something in some some way. And Ramazani was just another indication of that. And the way he took his goals were very, very good. And again, he's a good player. He is a good player, but sometimes it takes a bit of time to settle into a new country in a powder keg at Ellen Road at Leeds as well. A difficult place to really, if you don't settle quickly, it can be difficult. Ramazani probably found that to be the case, but what a reminder of what he's capable of.
Yeah, his celebrations were enjoyable as well, doing a little silly dance in front of the fans at Ellen Road. But yeah, this was absolutely brutal from Leeds. It felt like a big promotion party, and they duly delivered on everything that they wanted to do here. But let's have a look, Justin, at what this means heading into the final day. We've got a comment here from McAllister Bishop, who says Leeds for the title now, definitely. We don't tend to put much interest in the title. It's all about promotion, really, isn't it? The title's a nice little bonus, but now it means Leeds' title hopes are in their own hands, and it's difficult, based off a performance like this, not to see them going on to secure that now.
Yeah, they just need to win, don't they? It's a shame for Burnley in a sense because they've been so good and efficient at just picking up results. But unfortunately, Leeds have been the most consistent, obviously, throughout the season. They're just winning games, and I think when you beat such a good team in Bristol City as comfortably as they did, yeah, it's a really difficult thing to really see that they're not going to get it over the line. That being said, they're away from home and they have a 12:30 kickoff on Saturday. So might I throw that one in there?
I mean, they were going to have a 12:30 kickoff, whatever that happens, wasn't it? Because everyone's playing at 12:30. But they are away at Plymouth. We must point that out now. A Plymouth side who are all but relegated.
A Plymouth
So
side
that's
who
worth
need
keeping in
a
mind.
20-goal swing.
Okay. Do you think that's going to change things? I'm not too sure. But considering what we just saw from Leeds here, it'll be a very, very big surprise if they don't get the title in the bag. And keep in mind as well, Burnley are facing Millwall, who still have it all to play for on the final day. And that's maybe another thing going in Leeds' favour there. So, yeah, we can. You'd imagine we'd be tying that up with Leeds, the title, come Saturday. We'll talk more about Leeds shortly, but of course, this result has big, big implications when it comes to the playoff race because Bristol City are now still needing to finish the job on the final day. It always looked like that was going to be the case anyway, unless they managed to sprung a surprise at Ellen Road tonight. But we never really thought that was going to happen, if we're being honest. We've got a couple of comments here. Jessica Drury says, well done to Leeds, but as a City fan, I'm worried we're going to fail to make the playoffs. James King, I'm a Bristol City fan, but Leeds were on another level tonight. I'm just hoping City don't drop their heads for Preston. There sounds like a bit of worry there from Bristol City fans, Justin. I wouldn't be too worried myself because I still think you're just looking at two teams here on different planes, aren't we?
Yeah. On this is all on paper, isn't it? With this, because as far as playing a team in the Championship, there's no team that I would rather come up against on the final day of the season than Preston right now, because of how much their form has dropped off. So in terms of failing to make the playoffs, I would expect Bristol City to see the job through. This game against Leeds, unfortunately, you just played Leeds at the wrong time. I think if this was a few weeks ago, you might have got a result. But you've played Leeds where, they are frothing at the mouth, and, you don't want to do that. You don't want to come up against Leeds side who are in that mood. But with this Robin side, with Liam Manning, I would fully expect a reaction. The goal difference doesn't help things at all. It makes it all very even. So in the event of Bristol City losing and the likes of Borough winning, it could it could make things. Well, Bristol City will drop out of the top six potentially. So yeah, there are a lot of variables at play now, but I'm still confident with this Bristol City side. I am.
Yeah, it is somewhat significant, really, for Preston, isn't it? Because they would have been hoping Bristol City had nothing to play for heading into the final day. But as we were alluding to, they were probably expecting it to be the case that they were still having Bristol City competing for something heading into the final day. Got a question here from Matt SB. Do you guys reckon the lowest points tally record ever for the playoffs will be broken this season? The record is 68 points. As things stand, you've got Bristol City on 67, then you've got Coventry, Millwall on 66, Blackburn 65, Middlesbrough 64. So it's a possibility, Justin. The thing we have got to keep in mind here, not all the teams in the playoff race are exactly in form right now, are they?
Well, yeah, it's incredible.
Blackburn and Millwall.
Yeah, except Blackburn, weirdly, are the form team, along with Millwall, as you say. But it's crazy that we're looking at the bottom of the table and the likes of Derby, Luton. They're all the form teams in the Championship, where the teams that need wins to get into the top six, they are falling at the final hurdle. For me, it speaks of a. This is probably representative of the big gap between the Premier League and the Championship. I'm not going to get into too much detail on it because we debate it fairly often. But I think the standard is much lower this season, which is, I can't really say it's disappointing. But what we've got now is chaos, and that's something that we need to embrace at this level. That being said, I wouldn't be surprised to see all the teams lose. I know it's not possible because Coventry and Borough play each other on the final day, but that being said, neither of those teams have really put a convincing case of wanting to finish in the top six. So it's such a ridiculous scenario that we find ourselves in, and probably one that needs to be addressed. But the only way that gets addressed is big recruitment drives from each individual club.
Yeah, I think we haven't seen a club this season like West Brom from last season, who were just brilliantly consistent
Yeah.
all season long, and were sort of like the best of the rest. Because of course we had the big four in quotation marks last season. West Brom were like in a league of their own, really, and were just always clinging on to that playoff place. But let's go back to the what's at stake on the final day, Justin, because it's interesting you mentioned goal difference a second ago. I think some of the clubs in that playoff race will have been looking at it thinking, come on, Leeds, score a few more, please. Because as each goal went in, I was looking at the league table thinking, okay, that's interesting. Because now I think it's most impacted Blackburn, because Blackburn now, if they draw on the final day, no, actually, draw wouldn't. What I mean is, if Bristol City draw and Blackburn win, that means they would go ahead of Bristol City. Still a long shot because Blackburn have to go to Sheffield United, but that's a possibility. Millwall would have been hoping a few more goals went in as well. To help with the goal difference. But Coventry, it's significant for them too, because they could go ahead of Bristol City on the final day if they get a draw. So when you look at it like that, Justin, maybe Bristol City, considering the number of shots on target Leeds had, would have been looking at it thinking it could have been worse. But still, hasn't helped their cause particularly, has it?
Well, it's made it significantly even down there. It's crazy what a couple of goals have done. Even if Middlesbrough beat if Middlesbrough beat Coventry, obviously that puts them above Bristol City on goal difference. It moves Coventry out, and then Bristol City are all of a sudden in a bit of bother if they lose to Preston. So, yeah, the scenario that we've got right in front of us, just because Leeds scored 4 goals, is genuinely mind-boggling. And like you said, it opens the door up for Blackburn, who they should not be in the running for the playoffs, but they are, because the consistency of teams above them just hasn't been there. And obviously with Millwall having scored 46 and conceded 46, having the most mid-table season I could possibly think of, again find themselves in the running for the top 6. It's a bizarre set of circumstances that, again, it creates a hell of a lot more intrigue. We had the relegation to feast our eyes on come Saturday, but now we've got the playoffs. We always had it, but now the goal difference has come in. It just made it all the more interesting.
Yeah, I think if you're playing it like a percentage kind of game, I would say Blackburn's chances of getting a playoff place on the final day have slightly increased now. I don't think Millwall's have. I don't think we can go that far because the goal difference hasn't gone enough in their favour. Plus, they've got Burnley on the final day, so it's still quite difficult for them. I would say Coventry's chances have now increased as well. Middlesbrough's haven't really changed because they were already a few goals ahead in terms of goal difference on Bristol City. But it's interesting how this one game, which on paper we didn't really expect Bristol City to get anything from anyway, so we kind of had that in mind. But as the goals were ticking in, that has seen Bristol City's chances of getting a playoff place slightly decrease by every goal that went in. Still, they're in the hot seat. They're in the driving seat because they've got Preston on the final day, who are, let's be honest, absolutely shite right now. And they have got, obviously, more points than everyone else. So that's still good for them, but now there may be a bit of nerves which have perhaps just crept in there when it comes to that. But we'll have more chat about that over the coming days, Justin, as we count down to the final day of the season. We probably won't have much chance, really, because of everything else that's cracking on, to talk about Leeds United and what we're looking ahead to with them now, because the title race we may have a chance to mention when we have a deep dive into the final day on Sunday. But otherwise, that may just be it for Leeds now, Justin. And I wanted to ask a quick question regarding what their squad is looking like ahead of next season, because we have each had our takes about how much strengthening needs to be done. But I think it is worth having a look at each position in a very quick fire fashion and saying where you think they need to strengthen. So just hit me with that, Justin. What do you think are the priorities where Leeds need to strengthen?
Goalkeeper. That's the obvious one, isn't it? They need the goalkeepers
It's
to
a
come
good
in.
start.
Yeah, goalkeeper's the absolute must have for Leeds. I would argue a right back as well. I like Jaden Bogle going forwards. Defensively, I think in the Premier League he's going to get exposed. I mean, we saw at Sheffield United that did happen. Centre back maybe Pascal Struijk's injury record. I'm not a huge fan of. He's a beautifully gifted defender, but just the injury record concerns me. Joe Rodon's ready-made for the Premier League. Don't need to worry about that. Perhaps another midfielder, a Calvin Phillips, maybe that would really really help things as well. And I think
That's one of the most obvious transfers, I think,
Yes.
of the
Yeah.
summer. I can just see that happening, along with Kiefer Moore to Wrexham.
We'll have none of that. And then I think a number 9. I think they're fine out wide. They've got a lot of depth in the wide areas. Maybe make that Manor Solomon loan move permanent. But getting a number 9 in, I like Joel Pirro, but if you can play him just off a physical number 9, you can probably get a little bit more out of him.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair assessment, Justin. I think goalkeeper, obviously, the number one priority. I would say the next priority is a number 10. Brendan Aronson, I think, is a decent squad player in the Premier League. I would not be wanting him to play every week. Striker, yeah, I agree with you there. Joel Pirro, I just don't think is physical enough for the Premier League. Great finisher, don't get me wrong. We saw today what he can do playing deeper as well. But they need someone who's going to score enough goals for them to have any chance of staying in the Premier League. And then obviously getting Solomon on a permanent deal would be a great start. And then, yeah, I think you're probably right with the fullbacks as well, Justin. I think it's also interesting what's significant about tonight, Justin, is we may have seen some of the old guard at Leeds possibly departing. Patrick Bamford coming on as a sub. I imagine that's probably the last time we'll see him at Ellen Road.
Makes sense. He's contributed barely anything. It's no disrespect to him. Injury record over the past 2 or 3 years has been really, really poor. And again, much has been made of the resources that's been directed towards him wage-wise. I don't want to speculate too much on that, but it's clear he's going to be on a fairly big wedge. So yeah, it just makes sense to move Patrick Bamford on to make room for another player.
Yep, I think it will help with his wages as well. I imagine Sam Byron may have played his last game for Leeds as well. He's been a good servant over the years, even though he's had a time away in between there as well. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see whether that's the last time we see them.
In a Leeds shirt.
In a Leeds shirt, yeah. God, I'm not going to disappear off the face of the planet. Wouldn't surprise me if you see Patrick Bamford in a Wrexham shirt next season either. I'm just linking all these players with Wrexham next season. But yeah, Justin, I think just going back to the question that we were just asking about the Premier League, how many players do you think they need to sign? I've always said that one of the big problems with the gap between the Championship and the Premier League is that Premier League squads nowadays have 2 or 3 squads worth of Premier League talent, whereas Championship clubs, obviously going into the Premier League, don't have that much. So what would you say is the bare minimum that they would need?
I would argue 6 or 7 players. And I think what you've got with the starting 11 now, probably a couple of those will become squad players, and then obviously you need to replace those with first 11 players. It'll be the same at Burnley, by the way. I think teams now, because of that gap being so significant between the Premier League and Championship, you've got to be ruthless. There's no time for sentiment, and that might also be the case with Daniel Farke. Dare I speculate? Ruthlessness, I think, is going to be the main ingredient to staying in the Premier League, unless you are very, very special and very handy operators like a Brentford, like a Brighton. But they're not a regular thing, are they? They're not common ground. So yeah, I would say 6 or 7 players.
One last thing we were just saying about whether this is the last time we see Bamford and Byram at Ellen Road. Could it be the last time we see Daniel Farke at Ellen Road? Just playing devil's advocate there, because of course there have been reports recently about his future, so we'll wait and see on that. The commentators were making a big deal about the fact that the Leeds chairman turned down the chance to have an interview with
Yeah.
them about that, which is interesting. We'll leave that there. We had a couple of polls put out, Justin, where we've had our viewers have their say on some of the things we've been talking about here. Who's going to win the title on the final day, Leeds or Burnley? You're saying Leeds, Justin?
I am.
94% of people agree with you. 5% said Burnley. I don't know what's happened to the remaining 1%. They're lost in the ether somewhere.
Sheffield United.
They just don't know. They can't make their mind up. And we also asked, where do Leeds need to strengthen the most in the summer? Goalkeeper, defence, midfield, forwards. Unsurprisingly, goalkeeper was the standout one. 68% of people said Leeds need to get a new goalkeeper. Pretty bloody obvious, really, isn't it? We also had 13% say midfield, 10% say forwards. I thought forwards might get a bit more there. Defence got 10%. I think defence is the least of their worries, but one or two players would definitely not go amiss there. And we also had another one, which is a big poll indeed, Justin. Will Leeds stay in the Premier League? Yes or no? What are you saying?
Based on evidence that we've seen with clubs coming from the Championship into the Premier League and going straight back down, I would say no.
It's an uphill climb, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's very hard to say at this stage without knowing what Leeds do in the summer. So at the moment, I would say no as well. 80% of people said yes, though. Some optimistic Leeds fans, confident that their club will do the business over the summer. But I think that's just about time for us here on the Second Tier podcast. This has been a live stream reacting straight off the back of Leeds' thumping of Bristol City. One step closer to the title, Bristol City one step back from the playoffs. Who knows? Heads into the final day, and it's very, very interesting in that regard. But if you are watching on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe for more content like this going forwards. And otherwise, this has been the Second Tier podcast. I've been Ryan Dilks.
I've been Justin Peach.
And a big thank you for watching.